What if one mistake when you go to buy a house like this could cost you thousands of dollars? What if it meant where your mortgage wasn't affordable? Well, this is exactly what we've seen happen to hundreds of homeowners just like these right here, and exactly what happened to me more than a decade ago. So in today's video, I'm going to show you the top mistakes to avoid when purchasing private flood insurance for your home. So let's get started. But before we do, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to not make the mistake and go ahead and hit share, subscribe, and like this channel so other people can find the same valuable content. Hi, I'm Chris with the Flood Insurance Guru. More than a decade ago, I bought a house just like this right here in a high-risk flood zone. And I made a lot of mistakes. One of them was trusting my insurance agent, and it cost me thousands of dollars. In fact, it almost cost me my house. And in today's video, I'm going to show you the top mistakes that we've seen hundreds of homeowners make, including myself, when it comes to private flood insurance. So let's talk about these mistakes today. The first mistake is everybody's so focused on that flood zone because historically, this is what drove a lot of rates with the federal flood insurance program. However, today in 2025 and beyond, the federal flood insurance program doesn't even use flood zones. However, this video is about private flood insurance. So only about 30% of the time are private flood insurance companies actually using the flood zone to determine your rate. So what is it that you really should be paying closer attention to? It should be your flood risk score and how people are using this. You see, a lot of people use this flood risk score. It's a score that you can get in the description of this video from 0 to 100 on the chances of your property flooding. Now, the higher the score is here, more than likely the higher your private flood insurance is going to be. This means you could be closer to a floodway. You could have a higher replacement cost on your property, flooding frequency. All these things that private flood insurance companies use to determine rates goes in that flood risk score. So you should use that. The next mistake we see people making is they just get one private flood insurance quote and they go with it. That's it. Because with the federal flood insurance program, all rates should be the same. With private though, in fact, just this morning, we saw private on homes like this right here, ranging from $400 to $4,000, depending on the appetite of the company. So don't make that mistake. Get at least 3 different private flood insurance quotes when determining your things. The next thing you should also be looking at, or if you decide to make a change in the middle of the policy, unlike home insurance or auto insurance where you can basically switch anytime throughout the year, many private companies have restrictions against this. In fact, they may even call it exclusions about how you can cancel policy or what's called minimum earned premium. Pay attention to the minimum earned premium on that quote of that policy. Most companies are 25%. This means that they're going to keep 25% of the base premium if you decide to switch. The next thing you want to pay attention to, will they even let you switch in the middle of the year if you have a mortgage? Some of them will not. Remember this, anytime you typically see surplus fees, regular fees, broker fees, all these things typically are non-refundable. So you want to pay attention to that and decide, and just in case you decide you're not happy throughout the year and you want to make that switch. The next thing we see people making a big mistake on when it comes to private flood insurance is just taking out the coverage that your bank requires. One of the biggest benefits of private flood insurance is you can get more than a national flood insurance program. You can get replacement costs on these properties. In this neighborhood, that averages about $600,000 to $700,000. You can get replacement costs on your contents, something the federal program doesn't offer. You can get additional living expense. So if your house floods like this right here, you've got a temporary place to live. And I'll tell you a quick story about a lady we had in Nebraska years ago when private flood insurance was just becoming available across the Midwest. She was the only one on her block that had taken out a private flood insurance policy. She had a hotel pay for it for 6 months. She talked about the financial and the emotional stress this took off of her, that she didn't have that burden like her neighbors did. So when getting your private flood insurance quote, make sure to get building coverage, contents coverage, and additional living expenses if it's available. You know, most people think it's not available because the federal program does not offer it. The next thing you want to take a look at when getting that private flood insurance quote, maybe you got a really cheap quote, you want to look at the 36-month track record. Work with your insurance agent to understand how the claims process works. With their rates, hey, what have you seen over the last 36 months? What are you seeing with helping with all these other people with their flood insurance across your area when it comes to rates? Are they consistent? Are they skyrocketing? You want to pay attention to all those things so you don't make those same mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes though that we see most people make is that a private flood insurance policy does not have the private flood insurance clause. This is huge, and I'll tell you why. In order for a bank to accept a private flood insurance policy, it has to have this private flood insurance clause that mirrors certain things with the National Flood Insurance Program. So if you're purchasing flood insurance and looking at private flood insurance, you want to avoid these mistakes. In the description of this video, you can download our guide on the different flood insurance options that we've helped hundreds of people with across the country, myself included, where I bought a house like this more than a decade ago. I'm Chris with the Flood Insurance Guru, and I look forward to helping you with your private flood insurance needs. And if you're ready to get that quote, it's 3 simple steps. Step 1, fill the form out on our website. Step 2, connect with myself or one of our advisors. And step 3, finalize your policy. It's that easy. Thank you. In a non-coastal area.